There is something very taboo that I would like to discuss with you today. I wish to talk about recovering and healing from extraterrestrial abductions. The reason this topic is coming up today is first because there has been a lot to suppress people's memories of extraterrestrial abductions. Now, I wish to explain that we cannot have our memories entirely wiped. What actually happens with this technology, for the lack of a better word, is what they do is they make it harder for us to recall these memories. So the memories are still very much there, we just cannot access them. And what I foresee happening, of what has been brought up into my awareness, is this technology to make it difficult to access this information is becoming weaker and almost disappearing, which will create a massive collective remembering of these abductions on a global scale. And from my own personal experience, the government, the public health, we are not equipped to address this trauma because we don't even agree whether extraterrestrial beings are real or not. So therefore, I'm creating this video today to help you and give you tips on how to recover from extraterrestrial abduction. It is all based on my own personal experiences with that. It's not to say that what I have experienced, you will also experience. Your experience of remembering might be very different than mine because at the end of the day, we are all different. I just want to touch up on many different topics. So if it has happened to you, you know what to expect, or if you're having these experiences, you know you're not alone and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. My name is Isabel and welcome back to the download. So how did my remembering happen? Well, first I started having or noticing changes within myself in my 20s, and I was someone who felt emotion deeply and had a nice creative musical outlet for it. I enjoyed playing guitar and it was great until I noticed that there was a kind of emotional numbness that crept in, and because I was starting to struggle feeling emotion at the depth that I was used to, I started becoming less interested in playing guitar and certain hobbies started to dimmer, if you say. And that was very mild. Like, I went to work, I was still bubbly at work, like there was no all my relationships with people. Like, I didn't think it was anything major happening, just something that I noticed. And that further, another thing that I noticed, I would like almost simultaneously, was sometimes I would wake up in the morning, despite sleeping all night, I would wake up tired, like exhausted, and I didn't know why. And then I thought that maybe I was getting sick with something. Maybe my immune system was fighting something, and I would still go to work, like no problem, do my day. But what was strange is, as soon as the sun would go down and day would turn into night, I have a peak of energy. Now I felt energized and I was like, oh, maybe I just got over into my immune system was fighting and now I'm cured. Like, I must have been just onset of a cold that didn't turn into a cold or something like that. These did not happen every single day. It was just maybe 1 or 2 days out of the week, and then I would be fine for a little bit. So again, nothing major, but over time it transformed to something else, and that something else were night sweats, where I would wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, and I would have to go like pick a towel, put it in the bed, and like get back to bed, and it was like really, really, really strange. And I was like, asked my cousin, I was like, oh, what? Because his mother was a nurse and he knows a lot about like medical stuff. And I'm like, what about night sweat? And it's like, oh, maybe like you ate something spicy before you went to bed or something like that. It just could be like food that you ate. I was like, sure. That was enough of a reason for me. I didn't pursue it further. These events, although they're very minor thing, but compound over a long stretch of time, started to really affect me. The emotional numbness became into full-blown apathy, and the night sweats and the difficulty sleeping at night became a more reoccurring thing. So it became a point in my life, like by the time I was 30 years old, it was incredibly hard to, like I was starting to fatigue very easily. Like I would always wake up tired. I would still push through. I exercised. I did everything I could to keep strong, which ultimately meant that I was burning the candle by both ends, really, because I was exerting all of this energy, but I would never have proper rest. And something else that happened is I ate something spicy. It was like 9 o'clock at night. I still remember it to this day. And I had a Halifax explosion burger from Pete's Boutique, like very detailed. And I ate that with some french fries, and then I went to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night fully paralyzed. All I could do is barely move my head and my eyes, and to the left of me, next to me, I saw an extraterrestrial being, and I could remember his big black eyes. And I remember telling him, please don't blink, because if you do, this will be all too real and I can't handle it. I was trying to scream to wake up my peacefully asleep boyfriend at the time, and there's no sound that could come up. And I could see like white beings that I could see through, and a pink portal at the foot of my bed. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I worked construction at a time. I repaired submarines for Department of National Defense. Like mechanically inclined, very left brain. I was like, there has to be a logical explanation to this. I'm most likely there's some glitch in my brain. I'm awake. I'm in sleep paralysis like you would be in REM sleep. And I'm hallucinating my dream. I'm projecting my dream into my reality. Like that has to be the proper explanation. Whether or not I believe in extraterrestrial, like, wasn't the point at the time, because I was like, if I see an extraterrestrial being, doesn't mean that I have to assume that what I'm seeing is real, because this is so far-fetched. So essentially, I was at peace with that, so I was able to get myself back to sleep. And then I wake up the next day and I look at my boyfriend at the time, and I was like, I had some really weird dreams last night. And he says, yeah, last night was weird, but we never talked about it again. And this is when the post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms really started to kick in. Full-blown apathy. Sometimes now I would have like panic attacks without knowing why. I left my boyfriend because I figured like I was working through something and heading somewhere that I could not invite something. Like I didn't want to invite someone into that environment. I was like, no, something's really wrong here. And then I also developed what I didn't know at the time was called hypervigilance. When you go to a restaurant, but you're looking at all of the exit doors, you're counting who's at the restaurants, you need to have your back on the wall. Like it was so much to manage just to be out in public without any reasons. Like I didn't know I was transforming into this person. So I went to see my doctor, which referred me to a psychologist, and it must have been really bad because usually like there's like a waiting list for like 6 months in Canada to see a psychologist, and she got me in within 2 weeks, no 3 weeks. I was like, oh my God. So I went to see a psychologist. I labeled all the symptoms, all the changes that I had witnessed over the years, and how it got like progressively worse, but on such a small increments. I almost didn't see it coming until it was like very like, oh my God, like what happened here? How did this even happen? So we did some EMDR. We talked about things that happened in the past, but for some reason I felt like my symptoms were way too acute for what seemingly would have had happened in my life. Like something that's just did not add up there. So she also wanted to prescribe me medicine. Like she's like, if you want to go see like a psychiatrist, I have someone who can see you like really quick. And I was like, I was afraid of the secondary effects of medicine and whatnot, and I was like, I'm gonna give myself permission to just try to pursue this a more holistic way and see what comes out of that. So I started doing yoga, and then I went to see a homeopath, and she was very interesting because she was also Buddhist. And she looked at me and she's like, your soul, your spirit is like outside of you. It's like you're all cut down from your waist down. And that made sense to me because I could barely feel my body at this time. I could go outside and be bit by a gazillion mosquitoes and not be bothered. It would barely itch because I was so dissociated from my body. So she introduced me to meditation, and that was very difficult because every time I was sitting on a chair, I would be so squirmish. I couldn't sit still. Like it was like all of a sudden I was thirsty, I needed water, I was too hot, I was too cold. Like it would take me like half an hour to just prepare for like a 2 minutes meditation. But that started to help in a way. Not that it made me feel better, but I think allowing this space, and when you meditate too, without the capability or the capacity to feel emotions, it's incredibly boring. So these meditations were like very uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable. And she told me the reason, the homeopath, she told me the reason I had emotional numbness is because I had so much stress going on in my body that if I were to feel it, I wouldn't be able to function. So by blocking my emotion meant that I was able to still perform in the world. So I felt like this organic robot that was too alive to be dead, but too dead for the living, if that makes sense. So essentially, believe it or not, the memories started to come back. That I had in fact been abducted by extraterrestrial beings, that I was seeing them operating on top of my stomach, on top of my belly, and I didn't know what they were doing. I blocked these images. I was like, I know what this is, but I don't feel like I'm ready to see more. But I started to feel like sheer terror. Like it was very, very, very unpleasant. And even then, I did not believe it because I'm a rational person. So what happened is I started thinking about when you look of children's book and they talk about a werewolf that goes out when the moon is lit at night, when it's a full moon, and it goes out and eats children. That got me thinking, like, was there at some point crimes committed that it was so horrifying to think of another human being doing that we had to mask them as monsters. We had to mask them as werewolves and vampires, when in reality it was really human beings, but the thought of it was just too frightening. So I started wondering, is there something that happened to me that was so bad that the thought of it being done by humans is incomprehensible, so I have to mask them as some kind of extraterrestrial beings? But in the midst of remembering, I also started to develop psychic abilities, which I also did not believe in. I thought I was losing my mind. But eventually that opened a path that I gave myself permission to follow that. My reasoning was like, you know what? I'm going to go down that path for like a year, just 1 year. And if a year I'm still just this crazy person talking to myself about these things, then I'll go commit myself to a psychiatric institution or evaluation. I'll take it from there, like fine. But this is where I started meeting very unusual people. And a couple of them was like Rita and Phil from Sound Beings, and they do psychic readings and they do private gongbats. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. As a birthday gift to myself, I decided to go visit these people. And mind you, they don't know anything at all about my past or my ET dreams or these interactions. They know nothing. So I drive 3 hours to go visit them, and I'm being greeted with Phil. And the first thing he tells me when I walk into his home is like, please don't tell us anything, because after the gong bat, we're gonna be providing you with feedbacks, and we want you to know that they are genuine, that we were not fishing for information, and it's something we could have just picked up talking to you. So I was like, fine. So I walked in, and he talked about his time in the UK, and then eventually Rita came out, and I went and I lay for the gong bats for like a whole hour. And after that, this is what they told me. She's like, oh my God. They're like, you have so much extraterrestrial DNA. I mean, we all have some to a degree, but you definitely have something with ETs going on there. And they say, you're very connected, you're very psychic. It's like a highway for you. You can communicate with all of these beings easily. And like you're going to have a path with that. And I was like, oh my God. They didn't know anything. How could they have known? There was no way for them to know. And that got me to start taking this a little more seriously. As I started taking my memories of extraterrestrial abductions more seriously is where I started to feel some growth in my healing, if that makes sense. Another thing that happened when I was like, okay, is the ET started communicate with me, and not only that, they were like, we're coming back to visit you. We're going to be there at this date, at this location, and you're going to see us. And I have. Like, they came, like, full spaceship and everything, green lights, mist time, like the whole experience. Now I had a full conscious experience of extraterrestrial abductions. And I'm just sharing this with you for sake of you knowing where I come from with this information, that yes, I have been abducted. Yes, I have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder because of it. Essentially, this is my story with that. How did I heal from that? So the symptoms that I've experienced outside of the PTSD is, there came a point where in the weekend I would come home, and anyone who would try to contact me or connect with me was triggering, because it felt like I was being invaded. Just an email or a phone call would be like, oh, why is this person wants to communicate with me? Like, what do they want? Like, there was an automatic rejection of anyone who was trying to come in my space. And I feel, to me, that's a huge indicator, because there has been an invasion. If you think about it, you go to bed at night, you lock the door, you go to sleep, and you think you're safe. Like, you don't think anything's going to happen, and yet something does happen. You literally get plucked out in the sky, like beamed up like Scott, and they do things that are not pleasant. And then they, put you back to bed, expecting you to operate normally in the world. And even though they affect your memory, you still very much, on a certain level, do remember. So everything trying to come into your space feels like triggering, because there's been an invasion of personal space, of trust, and that can be very triggering for people. That is one thing I want to mention. Another thing that I had to experience too is, who do you go for help? So now I have very deep post-traumatic stress disorder. I very much understand now, why do I have trouble sleeping at night? Because I don't feel sleep. Sleeping is associated with bad things happen. So if there's a connotation of bad things happen when I fall asleep, you're not going to want to fall asleep. And even if I were prescribed sleeping pills, they wouldn't work. Actually, taking sleeping pills spiked up my adrenaline, because your stomach acid knows what this medicine is for, and be like, oh no, we're not sleeping, we're not doing the sleeping thing. So I would wake up with like my heart pumping in my chest, because it was the adrenaline for preventing me for getting a restful, deep sleep. So where do we go with this? Can I go to a psychologist with this issue? What are the implications of that? Now, psychologist is not a direct science. It's not like mathematics, 2 + 2 = 4. But if you go to a psychologist, his evaluation of you will be very much impacted with his belief system. And you cannot not consider that whether or not your psychologist you decide to go to beliefs system as far as extraterrestrial being goes may not affect his diagnosis. In fact, if he rejects this idea entirely, that could potentially means you being labeled as schizophrenia because you're having this. They're going to say you're having hallucination. And to me, that is straight up gaslighting. Like, I'm sorry, but no. So I was not about to go to a psychologist and discuss these issues because I didn't feel safe. I didn't think anyone would believe me. And so that veered me off further into the spiritual community, which, to be fair, I don't want that to happen to people. It was 2 years, let's say, but like my experience in the spiritual community is the healers there sometimes needs more healing than the person sitting in front of them. And there's a lot of narcissistic behavior going on there, people misusing spirituality to actually go deeper into their egos instead of shedding their egos. And essentially, you're exposing yourself through a soup of people who may not all have the best interest at heart, and they may not be the most empathetic people, even though they label themselves as such, which should have been red flags, but we'll cover that in a minute. So that's another reason why I find it so important for me to make this video, is I really want to educate the public with this, because I don't think it's fair that there are people out there suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder due to extraterrestrial abductions, and we don't even get the proper help that we might need. So where does that leave us? I started talking about this to people because when I arrive into the spiritual community and people are so loving, they're so open, or so they say, and they talk about their thing openly and they sit in circle and they had a discussion, I was like, oh, that's good. I can do that too. So I was honest about what happened to me. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm here. I'm trying to heal from extraterrestrial abductions. And wow, there's different complications with that. First is, this is a heavy topic. And if you think of trauma, like let's say I go out in the park and I get assaulted and then I come back and it's a big assault. Like, you know, like I'm bruised up and I tell a close friend of mine, hey, I've been assaulted. Like, oh, there's some empathy. There's like, are you okay? Like, there is validation. Like, people are validating that something happened. They offer you empathy. And they may not actually ask you specific questions because they know it's going to be traumatizing. Now, all of that humanness, you can toss that out the window when it comes to extraterrestrial abductions. When you mention this to people, their eyes, to me, usually glazed over. It's too much for them. They don't validate your experience. They may feel uncomfortable around you, not because they don't believe you, but exactly because they do believe you. But the truth that you embody is so uncomfortable that ultimately you make people around you uncomfortable. Just by being you, just by being honest. And there's not a thing you can do about it. And that can feel very cruel. That can create feelings of separation with the world. That there's a lot of empathy in the world, but not for you. And it makes you feel, my own personal experience, it's almost like there's a membrane. Like you're insulated in this capsule and there's a whole world interacting with each other, but not you. You're too weird. Like we're going to pretend we're your friends, but really we don't want to have anything to do with you. That can be difficult to integrate. Another thing too is, let's say, for the sake of, how you call it, integrity or intelligence, or do you have, what's the word here that I'm trying to use? it eludes me. But let's say I come and I introduce myself to people, and people are asking me what I do for a living. Oh, credibility. That's the word I'm looking for. Credibility. And in a way of social standing and credibility. So you introduce yourself to a new group of people. They may ask you what you do for a living, and not necessarily because they are curious as to what you do for a living, but they may want to know what kind of person you are. So if I'm here and I'm like, yeah, I'm a pipe fitter and I repair submarine for Department of National Defense, oh, cool. Like, they may think, well, this person cannot be an idiot. Like, I mean, she sends people in the depths below. Like, this is high tech. Like, there's a certain connotation and association that we can make with this identity, that what I do for a living. So now if I start engaging in a conversation about Bitcoin, it doesn't matter that Bitcoin is not related to submarine work, but because I have some kind of credibility and standing, people might actually be interested in that opinion. When you come out as an extraterrestrial abduction survivor, that credibility goes out the window. Like, now you may come across as cuckoo for Cocoa Puff. Like it doesn't matter. You could be a crack in informatics. Like, you can be awesome in science, mathematics. You can be incredibly intelligent. It doesn't matter. It's almost people now, they may not be interested in what you have to say in other topics that are completely unrelated with extraterrestrial abductions, because your whole credibility is at stake here. So again, that can feel very confusing. That can feel like we're not being seen, we're not being acknowledged for what we bring into the world. And yeah, so that's in short a lot of the things that I have personally dealt with over the years. So how did I heal all of that? First, I had to really look deep into myself and realize that it's not anybody's job to validate my experience. If I seek validation outside of myself, that means I'm putting that power or that feeling of validation in other people's hands, which means that other people will be responsible for my feelings of validation. Do I really want to put that power into other people's hands, or do I want to validate myself? So that's key number one. We need to take ownership of this experience. Need to understand that the world around us may not actually understand what happened. They may not give us credibility, but it's okay to really own it for our own sanity, for ourselves. I don't need people's validation. I can validate myself. I know what happened, and be firm with that. Really own it. Secondly, not being dependent on others for emotional support and empathy. We all have the power to give ourselves empathy and say, hey, you know what? I've been through a situation that is incredibly difficult, incredibly misunderstood, and it's okay. I may, because of these experiences, not operate in the world in the way that I used to. I may never operate in the world in the way that I used to, but I can still love myself in this moment and know that I will be okay. And ironically is when I started giving myself those things, I actually started connecting with people who had a lot of empathy for me, who had a lot of love for me, who care about what I thought about other topics and wanted to hear that as well. So again, it almost feels like when we feel empty of an energy and we give it to ourselves, then the world starts actually reflecting that back to us. The stress and the anxiety that came with that is I had, again, meditation. That's a must. And learning how to slow down this energetic ball that you feel, that is stress, that wants to, oh my God, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I really had to sit down with my stress and feel it fully. And a help with that is, I would say, treat your meditation as an expedition that you don't know what's going to happen, but you know you're going to make it to the other side. So even if you build up the stamina to meditate for like half an hour, it's okay. I allow myself to feel uncomfortable for half an hour, knowing that after half an hour I can go back to another coping mechanism, go watch a video or music or something to, but at least make time every day or every weekend to really feel into what you're feeling inside and allow these energies to resolve and develop techniques to calm your own nervous system. The thing is, if your nervous system is so riddled with stress, you probably have a lot of coping mechanism that makes it difficult to focus in the world. I know for myself, it was a time where I had a hard time just doing dishes, cooking, taking a shower, because I was so dissociated that every time I was doing tasks that demanded of me to be fully present, then I would feel all that stress and that anxiety. So I couldn't wait to do these tasks and get them done so I could go back and dissociate again, because that experience had been so intense. So essentially, make yourself comfortable with the uncomfortable. Allow yourself space to, okay, the next hour might be difficult, but knowing that on the other side, I'm going to be feeling a bit better. And this is essentially the waves that I was riding. So eventually it lead out that I would have a day that I actually felt good. Not great, but I felt okay. And then I would be plunged again in oh my God, this is very unpleasant. But I stuck with the meditation. With sticking with the meditation, eventually a day of feeling good turned into 2 days of feeling good and 6 days of not feeling good. And eventually this all leveled out, and it took some time and dedication. But now when I go to bed, I put my head on the pillow and 3 minutes later I'm asleep. I sleep like a baby, I really do. And it's because of all the meditation, calming down, working on the chakra system too. Chances are, if you've been in fight or flight for so long with PTSD due to extraterrestrial abductions, your sense of safety in the world, your root chakra, the way we feel grounded into the earth may need some work as well. So to relax, when you meditate, find out where there's tensions in your body and see if you can breathe into these places and relax it. Again, to develop a good meditation practice is going to help. Also, finding an actual psychologist to work with was a lifesaver for me. I was lucky to have become friend with someone who's not only an incredible therapist, but was also very open to psychic abilities and extraterrestrial abduction. So I didn't have to convince her. And she was immensely helpful in a way that when you haven't slept in 10 years, the fatigue that I was experiencing every single day was so intense. And I had to recalibrate my views as to how I spend my energy from a day-to-day basis. Because when you have very little energy, you may never actually spend time doing hobbies or things that you like, because when you do have energy, you have all of the other things that you need to do that needs to get done, like food, groceries, showers. So it can be very depressing. And I would highly recommend, this is something I want to gather eventually, is a list of psychologists who are well aware of these phenomena that people can work with safely. Another thing that I had to, and this is very unspoken about, but I have a suspicion that these problems not only affect people that has extraterrestrial abduction problems, but stories, but also people who may have been in and out of the system, like foster care or veterans. And that is being able to perform in society, paying taxes, getting a job. And the reason is, when you start remembering extraterrestrial abductions, you may start very much questioning the government around you, society in general. Are there any people who are benefiting from these extraterrestrial abductions? Has there been any kind of corruptions from government, like suppression of information? And that can mean that when it comes tax time, just the idea of doing your tax, you're like, oh, I'm not doing it. I can do it like in a year. Like it feels impossible because there's so much suppressed emotions in that by the time you do, you're having all of these mixed feelings. Like it can be very triggering just to sit down and do your taxes. Why am I paying taxes to a government that lies to me? Why would I pay taxes to a government that tells me certain things are not real, but I have experienced them for myself? Why are they not making this information available to the public so the public can be properly educated, but also the people who have been negatively impacted by this can find healing, proper healing? And all of these things can create a climate that is incredibly hard. Like if you think of filing your taxes or making a phone call to the taxman, let's say. We can all agree that picking up the phone and talking to someone on the phone is not something that is difficult to do. Like it's not like running a marathon. But when you have all of these emotions compound, all of this subconscious level of thinking that like I don't trust this, it can make these phone calls incredibly difficult. And I have a feeling that's something maybe veterans and people who have been in foster care might be dealing with. We're like, why there's so much homelessness? Well, why would someone wants to contribute into a system where the system failed them so bad that even the idea, like even if they were to try to get a job, there's just so much energy is coming up to the surface that they physically cannot. And I think this is something for everyone to look into. In all cases, developing a good meditation practice, validating yourself, and really start cultivating a sense of peace and calm within your inner vessels will help you overcome all of the challenges that comes with extraterrestrial abduction. And another thing that I did not discuss too is weird fears and the inability to get proper medical care for ongoing symptoms. Now you think of extraterrestrial abductions being coming and taking people and doing tests on them, physical tests. You come back here, you may have unknown fear and you have no idea why you have those fear. You could be frightened about the cold, like, oh, I cannot be cold. No, I need to be warm all the time. Can't go outside, it's too cold. And you don't know why you fear the cold. You could also have, like me, I had these weird headaches where it felt like my left brain was fusing with my right brain. And like different, like medical anomalies that cannot be explained. And you cannot feel safe telling a doctor that I've been abducted by extraterrestrial beings. Like I have been medically experimented on. And the inability to even go see a doctor about it, that can feel incredibly, that's a big emotional thing to hurdle. Like how, because sometimes you're going to have like physical symptoms, or you could potentially have physical symptoms that the doctor cannot pinpoint what is happening, and like not having answers to very concerning questions, the emotional tolls that it takes. So again, it all goes back to meditation, learning to accept that we may never get answers to these questions, finding closure with that within ourselves, and keep practicing meditation. Always when we feel that things gets overwhelmed or we hit like, oh my God, like I have this going on right now, I have like these symptoms are appearing or these difficulties are appearing, I'm feeling unseen. It always goes back down to sitting down and refilling a cup ourselves and allowing ourselves to have space with that. Speaking of space, I gave myself plenty of space. Although I'm speaking freely here on this video about extraterrestrial abductions, my family doesn't know. My father knows, And I've told him, and we had an amazing, he's been amazing in that space for me. But my uncles, my aunts, like, nobody knows. We're like, how about we keep this to ourselves? And when there's like some development with this, we can talk about it. And I live abroad, so my old coworkers, nobody knows. Nobody knows. And I don't mind that. So why would I talk about it publicly and then not feel safe to tell the people close to me? Is because for my own healing sakes, there's so many people who would have like opinions on this. And speaking of opinions, like, we don't go to the dentist with car problems. I wanted to eliminate the people in my close vicinity who could like start like firing things. Oh, you should do this. Like, why are you there? Like, why are you in South America? Like, what, you should come back here, or you should go get institutionalized. Like, I didn't want to open myself to a barrage of opinions or intrusive like things that I felt was like, well, you're not a psychologist, you're not like, I didn't want to open my personal space to all of this, so I kept it very clean by just telling like, yeah, people that I felt comfortable with. And when I went into a spiritual community, I was very open. I had my experiences with that, and it only made me stronger in that space. Because now I know if I talk to someone and I explain, yes, like I've had experience with, it comes up on a topic, like I don't wear that, like it's my identity. I'm quite happy talking about like other things, but yes, when it comes up, I know I expect people to be intrusive with their questions, because I know they have a huge curiosity. Oh, what did they do? Like, did they do this? Did they do that? I was like, oh, no, I actually don't actually feel comfortable discussing these topics with you. Like, it was traumatizing and I don't feel safe. I don't want to discuss that with you. But thank you for asking. We have to understand that people will have a natural curiosity. And I feel they're asking these intrusive questions sometimes not because they want to be rude. They're probably worried about their own safety, and they probably want to know what would happen to them. Well, what happened to you? So perhaps they can prepare mentally or some other XY reasons. So again, speaking of empathy, I can empathize that this information may be very uncomfortable for the person in front of me, or we all have a natural curiosity. I don't take it personally, but I do have boundaries, and I would strongly encourage you to do so. We don't owe anyone anything about, or as far as sharing our experiences go, and take it little by little. And if you need one day to unplug the phone and sit and be, well, I need to be with myself, I don't want to be disturbed, do that. I still do that from time to time. I just, for different reasons now, but yeah, sometimes I'm like, no, I feel like there's things I want to sit with. I put the phone on silence and I don't want to be disturbed, and leave it as that. There are empathetic people out there. There are understanding people out there. I feel that it's not right for us to isolate ourselves in these experiences. We should definitely have a proper space to discuss these things, to grow together. And perhaps in time I will start a blog on my website, or at least a space that I would like to create so people can have these discussions with each other in a safe environment. So this is what I had to share with you today. It was a lot. This is a big video. I covered a lot of topics. I wish I had more answer for you. I wish I could say, yes, go to this organization. They're going to hook you up with a good psychologist and whatnot. And in time, I may be able to find such places to go to. I know personally, I haven't really come across them. I think there's an organization in the UK who does this kind of work, but I'm here in South America. So yes, it's a lot. But I do feel by even posting a video like this and bring awareness, that's my goal mission. That's my aim, to really bring awareness. So perhaps by talking about this more and more, we can normalize this to a point that the scientific community, the medical community, psychologists and all that takes us seriously and start opening their spaces to us so we can heal properly. I think that's the human thing to do. So Thank you very much for watching this video. If you would like to know more or discuss in person, you can contact me on my website through my email address and have discussions in the discussions boxes below. And if you wish to have more information about what were these methods that were used to suppress our memory, I will leave links in the description box below, as well as to why I believe ETs are about to come and do a massive sharing and bringing things to light. Because on a galactic level, these abductions, we do have there are some galactic rules of engagements as far as interplanetary operation goes, and these abductions, they have breached a lot of these rules, and as anything, there will be prosecution, and this is very much on the way. And I feel part of the prosecution will be ET straight up landing here and say, hey, like, this is what is actually happening. Like, ETs taking over our news channel, social media, to share their version, to share what is happening, so we can have proper closure on a massive global collective level with these energies, and again, get the proper health that is needed to heal in these spaces. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Isabel, and enjoy the rest of your day.